Welcome to the CE Pro podcast. I'm Executive Editor Arlen Schweiger. Last year, we introduced readers to the UK-based organization Together for Cinema, which works with children's hospices to donate home theaters. Founder Ian Morrish joined me recently from England for this week's podcast recording to fill us in on the latest goals for the group now that it reached its original 25 installation milestone, as well as how others in the custom industry can get involved. As always, be sure to subscribe to CE Pro's YouTube channel and hit that like button on our videos, or subscribe to the CE Pro podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review. Ian Morrish of Together for Cinema, a UK-based organization that facilitates charitable home theater installations. Thanks so much for being a guest on the CE Pro podcast.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thank you for asking me along.
And Ian, obviously, we've talked before. I ran across your organization on LinkedIn last year, and it was great. We were able to connect and do some coverage in CE Pro. But obviously, there's a lot more to the story that we ran back in our December issue of last year. So before we get into Together for Cinema, let's talk about where you came from in the custom industry and what your background was.
Gosh, well, I'm another one of those guys who probably fell into the industry and then sort of got locked in. And I've been in the AV industry for 30 years, 32 years, I think now. Started in publishing in the UK, working for some retailers in the sort of audio high street market. Then got a contract with Cedia, worked for them directly for about 8 years. And for the last 13, well, last year, slightly different, but 13 years before that, I was working as the sort of Northern European international sales manager for the ISE show, which was great and enabled me to build up a pretty good network of contacts globally. So yeah, 30 years in the industry, not technical. I'm really not technical. When it comes to trade shows, I can sell boxes, I can do 6x8, but I'm not much beyond that. So yeah, that's my background.
Great, and the ISE show was actually it was the last show that I went to last year in February, and it was my second time there. And what a fantastic experience that is! I'm sure, like you said, your network of people in the industry, can obviously grow immensely during those trade shows. But then, how did this endeavor launch? How did Together for Cinema come about?
I think with a lot of these sort of good cause things, it was a very personal thing. So I don't want to labor the personal thing, but the facts are, what was it, 12, 13 years ago, 2009, 12 years ago, I was watching a program in the UK called The Secret Millionaire, and it's about a wealthy chap that goes undercover and goes to less fortunate areas and sees less fortunate people, as it were. And one of the stories was of a scrap metal merchant who went to Blackpool in northern England and visited a holiday home, as it was called then, for terminally ill children. The phrase now is short lives. And my wife was pregnant at the time, and you can't help but get touched by this kind of thing. And there was a couple of scenes that were very moving, and I bawled. I mean, any man with a heart or any person with a heart was going to shed a tear, and I did. And I just thought, well, hey, I'll donate. I'll do something. And then I thought, well, maybe I can do a bit more. I'm well connected in the AV industry. I've been with ISE for 2 or 3 years and Cedia before. I knew a lot of people from all angles, manufacturers, distributors, installers, and so on. So I was quite well connected. And I just thought, well, maybe they could do with some TVs or a cinema room or something. Fast forward 16 months later, we opened up our first cinema room in Blackpool, about a £20,000 cinema room. But there was one very defining moment. And this is very personal, and I don't want people to misinterpret this, but on the opening of the cinema room, there were 2 little girls sitting watching SpongeBob SquarePants on this £20,000 system. The audio was terrible, the image was dreadful. That was the recording; it was nothing to do with the equipment. And they were giggling and cuddling up and so on. And one of them, the elder one, called Bethany, was not in good shape. And I just walked out and broke down. And that sort of was for me personally, a defining moment that, Ian, if you can sort of do this, just by a little bit of effort, do another one, and do another. And that's how it started. So that's the personal bit over with. Beyond that, the industry have been incredibly supportive, but we'll get to that in a second, I think. But that's how the seed was sown in me. personally.
Yeah, well, I mean, what an impactful experience. That's great that, for one thing that you were looking to just figure out how to donate, but then how to kind of go that extra where you could use your profession and
Yeah.
work that in and really figure out, all right, what can I do to kind of bring some rays of light into it? Yeah, I think we got a little bit cut off when you're talking about the organization. I think is it called Together for Lives in the UK?
Well, my organisation is called Together for Cinema, but there is an organisation in the UK, a big charity called Together for Short Lives, and they are a sort of an umbrella charity that have under their jurisdiction is the wrong word, but under their umbrella, 54 children's hospices, and beyond that, some holiday homes for children and young adults with short lives. So they're an umbrella
Okay.
charity. So we work with them as well.
And so, Ian, how does a typical project come about in terms of how do you get involved? And I know, since 2009, you guys have helped create a lot of these projects. I think you just hit a milestone too. So tell
Yeah.
us about that in terms of, the goals that you had set at that time and moving past that a little bit. And then just in terms of how some of these projects came about.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I mean, I think hey, look, I had a busy job. I was working for IC. The show was growing. I joined IC in 2013 when there were 7 staff. I left last February the 14th, 2020, just as COVID hit. So that's probably in hindsight not bad timing actually, because the show market, exhibition market, sort of rather collapsed for a bit, and is still struggling. But so I joined in 2013. I had a very busy job. We were growing ISC. It was manic. It was really, really busy. So my targets were quite limited, really. And we did one, and that took a year and a half. And then we did a little bit more, and we got to 2 and to 3. And I think it was about 2013. I think I said, well, hey, look, we can do 25 by 2020. That would be amazing if we could do that. 25 cinema room installations by 2020. And the estimation was that we could get to about £500,000 worth of value. So we set that target, and we hit it in September 20, actually, even with COVID hitting and sort of pausing the whole world operation. We hit it into September 2020, which was a place called the White Lodge Centre in Chertsey in Surrey, just south of London. And that was our 25th. So we hit our target, and we hit the £500,000 barrier. We couldn't take on too much because, as I say, with busy jobs, it was hard to sort of put too much time in. But we did hit our target. And every install, how it comes about is different. I do work with, as you mentioned, Alan, the Together for Short Lives group. So it's a big recognised charity in the UK. And they enabled me to communicate to their audience via their newsletters and so on. And I think once you get one cinema room done, you become more credible. If I phoned up and said, would you like a £20,000 cinema in your children's hospice? They'd go, yeah, okay, we'll get back to you. And they just don't think it's real. And a lot of people were a bit cynical. So when, by the time we had 4, 5, 6, 7 done, word got about. And then I was getting contacted saying, hey, can you help us? And we're like, yeah, okay. And then we did a £50,000 install, and that got more talking and so on. It's self-perpetuated, but very slowly, which was good because it meant that there was a real sort of foundation of credibility and good work that we were doing. Not a penny ever changed hands until February this year, and we'll cover why. But
Ian, beyond the industry, was there much publicity about excuse me, about some of these stories, just over in the UK, or was it kind of just sort of word of mouth as they came about?
I think mainly word of mouth. There's a little bit. I mean, the BBC, obviously one of our main TV channels over here, the BBC North have covered it. We've had a little bit of sort of national exposure, but it's about getting the job done. Yes, exposure helps, and these kind of interviews really do help because it just spreads the word, gets people aware, and makes the next install easier because manufacturers, installers know about it. So that's really my drive is delivering the end result. Yes, I want to give everyone who donates and is involved exposure, but that's not why people are involved. It really isn't. It's about the end result. In fact, we've only had a couple of companies, not going to say anyone, who have said that we'll donate, but what do we get? What do we get in return? Well, Okay, don't worry then. We'll find whatever it was from somebody else. Don't worry.
Right. Maybe not the right cause for you then if you're asking for that in return. So
Yeah.
clearly to keep an endeavor like this going through 25 projects, though, you have had a ton of industry support, be that from manufacturers, distributors, I imagine, integrators. Um, how did some of that work with your connections? Are there some suppliers that you'd like to mention with us? Obviously, with the CE Pro audience, I'm sure it's a lot of the companies that our guys deal with and install. And how can manufacturers get involved with you? And
Yeah.
then what about on the integrator side? Where do you find your integrators for these installs?
Okay. I mean, there's a danger in mentioning companies because you always forget someone, and I'm not going to mention anyone. I won't. There are probably 100 different companies, distributors, manufacturers, installers, organizations like I mentioned CDO, organizations like CDO who back us and help us, and one or two operational partners who help make this happen. As I say, I don't really want to mention anyone. They know who they are actually, and they don't do it for exposure. But if I mention 3 or 4, there'll be 2 or 3 that think, "Why didn't you mention us?" So I won't. They're all on the web.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I'm just so conscious not to upset people.
But we're talking about, because it's home theater, we're talking about several different categories. Clearly, you've got display manufacturers, the audio, the cabling, any kind of furniture, decorations, right?
The main manufacturers and distributors that the products that we gather for the install. We try to limit it. We don't want to go too far with the whole delivery because it gets complex. But yeah, it's a projection screen, it's a projector, it's a speaker system, it's an AV receiver, it's some racking, it's maybe a little bit of lighting, it's cabling. It could be a mount. There could be acoustic walling. All sorts of things. Media servers.
So Ian, what's the best way for a manufacturer to get in contact with you, or to find out about what you have coming up in terms of the next projects that might be being designed or scheduled or in the works?
Well, via the website, www.togetherforcinema.co.uk, and to contact me through there is probably easiest. A lot of manufacturers will know me anyway from my past, but if not, then that is probably the best way. What I would then do is put you on the radar, talk to them about maybe getting involved, maybe sponsoring Together for Cinema, but also make sure that everyone who reaches out to me gets a sort of bi-monthly update of what we're doing, which venues we're working at, what relationships we have. We've got something exciting, I hope, happening with Cisco at the moment, which I won't say anything about, but I'm hoping that will come to fruition. There's lots of exciting things going on, but bear in mind, we've only gone sort of full time on this in the last 3 months. So there's a lot of creating the foundation, generating the sponsorship, defining which manufacturers we want to work with, and so on. So there's a lot of sort of groundwork we're doing at the moment, juggling lots of balls at the moment. We really are, but that's good.
Right. So can you go into more details about that in terms of, you had mentioned something about things changing in February.
This year,
just where you are, you hit your goal, I'm sorry, of the 25th cinema room. So in terms of now thinking forward, what are the goals coming up? And then do you see other projects that, that might be percolating that can be sort of adjacent to this one?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let me explain how this has come about. Basically, hey, COVID hit us all. Whether you were struggling to hold your business together, or struggling to get product, or struggling because you're too busy, whatever it is, it hit us all in the most bizarre way, and we all sort of wading through our own treacle lake, as it were. I had my own issues. I left ISC. I was about to join K&X. They'd been courting me for a couple of years, and we discussed it, and I'd written a job for myself. They were very happy with it. We were all very excited. Of course, gone out the window. So, last year, second half of last year was a difficult year, actually. We all had challenges. All the time, though, I was still liaising with people in the industry and had a lot of communication, be it people wanting my comments on ISC, which was a bit difficult because I just left, or, Ian, what's happening with Together for Cinema? And it became very very quickly apparent to me that people wanted Together for Cinema to continue. It was very difficult to continue. We weren't engaging like we used to, as we all know. It was a really challenging time, and everyone was busy dealing with their own business and dealing with, whatever it might be, furloughing people, or let's say good business, bad, whatever it was. So there was only one way I felt that Together for Cinema would continue, and that was by someone committing to it, to a much fuller committed role. People in the 4 or 5 people in the industry had suggested, hey, look, we'll sponsor you, but we'll sponsor you, make it happen. So that model very quickly came into play. So January we sort of start launching it. February, March we publicized it, and we now have, I think, 21 or 22 companies sponsoring us. We still need a few more this year. So if there's anyone out there who would like to back this project, sorry I shouldn't make this appeal, but please do contact me. It is a hell of a project, and the end results are, heartwarming. So we have sponsors, and where we're going now, because I think when money gets involved, it becomes very different. It's got to be transparent. It has to be, the foundation has to be strong. So we have a very credible steering committee. We have very credible operational partners. We have a strong foundation now, and we have real goals, real new goals. Our first goal is to hit 50 cinema rooms, so another 25 by 2026, and to hit £1 million worth of installs. I mean, that's hugely marketable globally in the AV industry, I think. For some little chap who just decided it was a good idea sorry, that's glorifying me. I don't mean to do that. Sorry, that's the wrong thing to say. The industry has made this happen though, and it's been amazing. But for us to make that, for all of us to work together, and Together for Cinema, is the right phrase. We're doing this together to get to £1 million of installs globally. In the UK, but to promote that globally in the industry is very, very strong. And I think nationally in the UK as well. So that's our first target, 50, another 25, so we get to 50 installs by 26.
Right, another very lofty goal and time frame too.
Yeah, no, indeed. Well, it's averaging about 5 installs a year. So we've got 4 on the go this year, all across the UK. There's one up in Huddersfield in Yorkshire. There's one up in Liverpool, very close to Liverpool. There's one down in Bournemouth. And there's one in a place called Glossop in Derbyshire, so near the Peak District. So there's 3 up north and 1 down south. And they're all really exciting, they'll all open before Christmas, we hope. There's one we need still to finalize an installer with, but I have a meeting on Monday to discuss that. So we'll hit 4 for this year. And this year, along with setting up the whole business and it being a short year and a difficult year and so on, if we can get 4 out in 1 year, hey, look, we can do 5 next year. But beyond, and that's the key, that's really what I think people want to hear about, is kids who are having a tough time enjoying a movie, cuddling up with mum and just losing themselves for an hour. Special time, it really is. And it's not only my kids and their parents, it's siblings, it's carers, it's anyone in that environment of children who are sick and having a struggle. It's wearing, so you need a bit of a break, and this is a great release for them. Beyond the children's hospices and sort of residential sort of daycare centres, there are areas we're looking at, and there's a commercial integrator who's very recently contacted me who said, look, I get a load of kit secondhand from this big educational establishment that rips out all its kit every 5 years and then puts new kit in. And it's a great bit of business to have. They get a whole new order every 5 years and they service it and maintain it, but they end up with a load of kit that is working. I mean, it's brilliant stuff.
In terms of what's in it?
Well, I'm guessing we're looking at getting a kit list, but I'm guessing it's it's screens, it's audio, it's there might be a bit of digital signage in there. Whatever goes into a university in terms of AV, that's what they have at secondhand. Now the idea is to some of that gets landfilled or recycle it. So the idea is now that's possibly, and these things.
So in other words, a lot of it is still viable to use somewhere else.
Absolutely. 5 years old, nothing wrong with it. So the idea is that we recycle that to locations that would never normally have the budget, would never normally have the belief that they could go spend £30,000 on audio equipment and screens and projectors and whatever. But actually, this integrator, we believe, again, it's all to be confirmed, hence I'm not saying names yet. They may supply it, they may fit it, they may service it, saves them recycling it or paying for it to be landfilled. So it's just a good. So, if I can become, a bit of a conduit with the AV industry to good causes, And even if I just recycle 100 grams worth a year or 200 grams worth a year, whatever it is, it's a step in the right direction. So there are other areas that we're looking at that we can, we're identifying, work and good things, recycling. I'm sorry, dog in the background. But we can. There's a lot of things we can do to help good causes who don't have the budget. We're not stealing a sale because they'd never normally buy it. We're just enhancing their operation, and I think that's a great and exciting route we're looking at as well.
Sure. And in terms of the integrators who you partner with, are they typically just local integrators to where you're doing the installation, or do you have some that you just kind of use over and over again? How can integrators get involved if they say, hey, we'd like to be a part of this in some way?
Hey, look, anybody wants to get involved. I mean, there's two ways an integrator can get involved. One is by just simply backing. Well, three ways actually. One is by simply backing us and saying, yes, we'll share on a LinkedIn posting and all of this kind of thing. Please do that. We need as much exposure for this. It's such a good. So please do that. Another way is, of course, they could sponsor and become a sponsor, and they get a little bit of exposure on the website and have that warm, fuzzy feeling, we know we're doing a good thing here. But in terms of installing, absolutely, please let me know if there is interest. They can contact me again through the website. We try to use all CEDIA member installers. Not every install has been carried out by a CEDIA member. A couple of commercial integrators have installed, and other residentials who are not members of CEDIA. But we work very closely with CEDIA. They back us, and like, hey, look, I work there, and so on. I back CEDIA completely. But if we have an area, somewhere that's a little remote and there isn't a CEDIA installer accessible, but somebody else says, hey, look, we can do it, and they're credible, absolutely, we'd work with them. But predominantly, we look to CEDIA installers as the main one. Some installers have done. I've got one gentleman who's doing his 4th install for us, actually. So he's done of the 20, I'll take 29, 25 we've done in 4 this year. Of the 29, he would have installed in 4. And there's another one who's doing one at the moment who would have now installed in 3. But predominantly it is sort of one in and then, and out, depending on the area. But local is key, absolutely.
That's great. I know here in the US, at CE Pro, we get a lot of stories sent to us, case studies that involve the Wounded Warrior Project and the Gary Sinise Foundation and integrators collaborating on smart homes. Is that something that there's an equivalent over there for ex-military members trying to really thrive because of smart homes, or anything that you might envision your company getting involved in?
I think there's nothing. There's never a no, and there's never a yes. We just don't know. Bear in mind, what are we now? We're June. This launched in terms of a more comprehensive committed role to me in March. And hey, as I said to you before, we're juggling so many balls. That's a ball that is probably sitting resting at the moment. I might pick it up. I might start to juggle with it. At the moment, no. I know there's a lot of goodwill, a lot of support for the ex-military in the UK and obviously in the US and globally in every country. Of course there is, and quite rightly so. But it's not an area that we have touched just yet. I live very close to Headley Court, which was a military rehabilitation centre. My wife used to work there. So I did actually talk to them about installing a cinema in their venue. But there's another organisation in the UK called MediCinema, who do much bigger cinemas, but they more manage content as opposed to the equipment, although they do administrate the equipment. So they look after certain areas of the military and the hospitals, and I'm sure there's other people that do. But it's something that we would certainly look at, depending on how this shapes itself. Say we'll know more in 6 months, and in the 6 months' time, we'll know a bit more in another 6 months.
Right, very good. In terms of the actual installations themselves, do those usually go, relatively smoothly? And then what are some of the, are there some ways that, you kind of customize everything, to get those little extra, pieces of flair in there to really help the kids light up, when they can?
Well, it's funny because I was talking about this this week. I've been the last 4 days. I've been all over the country visiting 3 venues, and also had a meeting with Together for Short Lives in Bristol yesterday with Cisco. And we were talking about this. It's funny that one or two of the very early installs were were sort of just a TV and some speakers, or I think actually particularly one was. And we had some very basic cinema systems. And you think, well, it's 10 grand. Whoa, 10 grand doesn't get you a lot now. We're now up to the sort of 60 to 85,000 pound mark for most of our cinema rooms, or certainly minimum 25 to 30. It's not about money, I know that, but they're becoming more and more comprehensive, and they're becoming more and more comprehensive as the offering gets more comprehensive. So acoustic paneling, acoustic walling, cinema seating. And there's a company we're tied up with at the moment. Again, I'd love to mention them, but I won't, because I just don't want to mention anyone, because I don't want to upset anyone. But a seating company in the UK who we're tied up with, and they've been really supportive. And that's an offering now that is becoming not a standard, but it's an option. The problem is in lots of our venues, the children's hospices, all of these rooms, or a lot of these rooms, need to be multifunctional. So putting too many fixtures like acoustic paneling or seating, etc., is difficult. It really is difficult. So lighting is perfect, because that's very visually stimulating to children. Putting speakers in a big screen, the audio and visual stimulation is incredible. The subwoofer, they can feel that. This is all great stuff, and sits in the multifunctional capacity. But 2 rows of cinema seating, it's pretty fixed, and that's difficult to work around if you need the room to be multifunctional. But hey, we're trying to get them as great as they can be, so that when the kids sit in the room and you hit that button and the lights go up, and lights go down, you get the LED lighting, screen fires up, they are in it, and they love it. They don't go to a cinema normally. They can't. It's too expensive and too logistically difficult. So we bring it to them.
Yeah, it's just that little bit of respite. Now, you mentioned that you did go back to a few of the locations. How much time do you spend revisiting them, and is it to check? Are you checking in on the systems while you're there? Hey, anything need repair, that kind of thing, or just kind of just checking in to say, just to see how everyone is doing?
Well, I don't go to many, actually. I mean, they're all over the UK. There's one particularly which is close to me, which, funnily enough, was the 25th, was the one in Chertsey, which is just around the corner for me. So I've been in there a couple of times since. But generally, it's we install, we have an opening, we might have a couple of conversations afterwards. But after the install, from my perspective, it's job done. Yet don't get me wrong, we don't just ignore it, but the installer has the obligation and the agreement with us to contact them on an annual basis, maybe have a service call. If there's any problems, a bulb goes, or the crash, and then he said a brand, then whatever the control system might be, if that needs reprogramming, then the installer has the obligation to go back. If there's a problem, and bear in mind, we've just gone more committed. I've contacted all 25 installs recently, and 3-4 of them have come back and said, hey, we've got a problem, and they didn't know who to go to, staff changes, whatever it is. So we're rectifying. We do rectify.
How have those relationships been from the installers? Do they kind of report to you and say, hey, things are, we just talked to so and so, the director of this one, he just wants to thank you again, or are they typically just very solid relationships that wind up lasting years, especially that with some of those older systems from the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, they are. I mean, I think once you've been, as an installer, once you've been into and I'll use the phrase very generically, but a children's hospice, and you've made a difference, it's like a drug. Actually, you just want to do it again. It's so moving. Some of the comments from the installers are just heart. I mean, they really are. They'll pull your heartstrings. They're so. Just say it's the most amazing experience, and it is actually, because you're making a proper difference. And the thing I've heard time and time again is, hey, look, what we do normally is we go and install fabulous cinema systems for multimillionaires who sometimes don't really know what it does and don't really appreciate it, but they've just got loads of money and they go and get all the great stuff, and that's okay. That keeps our industry pumping and keeps us going. But when you install a relatively humble system into a children's hospice where there are children, families, carers, etc., and you make a real difference that you can see and feel, it's very special. So yes, they're committed, absolutely, afterwards. If they need a bulb, or the AV receiver goes, whatever, they'll come back to me, and I'll rally around and we'll find something. You know, we've never managed to not find it. We've never had a problem and said, okay, we've got to buy a receiver or buy a speaker system or whatever. We'll always find it. But yeah, we do look after them afterwards, and we make sure the systems are working. And if they need upgrading, hey, look, we'll look at it. You know, we never say never.
All right. Well, Ian, once again, thank you so much for sharing that wonderful story with us. Remind the listeners and viewers again once more where they can find your website and how they can contact you. If you can give us your email address, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll give my email. I'll give my mobile as well, if I'm allowed to do that. My email is ian@ad-con.uk. I'll just spell that, IAN@ad-con.uk. That's my email address. Or the website is www.togetherforcinema.co.uk. And if anyone would like to contact me, please do. My mobile number is +44 7768 398 007. And I'll be delighted to talk to anyone about Together for Cinema.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Ian. We really appreciate the time.
Alan, thank you for your time and appreciate the exposure. I really do. Thank you.